They say there are 2 times that a person dies in their life. The first is when their physical body dies, and the second is when they are completely forgotten. Whoa, what the heck? Who said that? Oh my god, dramatic much? Holy shit. Sorry for the dramatic opener there, but I just kind of wanted to do it, you know? I feel like it fits the tone of the rest of this video as we get into it, so stay with me here. I recently watched the movie Little Fish. It follows a couple amidst a viral pandemic that causes people to lose their memories, forcing a couple to deal with the pain and struggle of losing each other. If this sounds familiar to you, don't worry, I thought it sounded familiar too, and that's because it has a very similar plot to the 2004 movie called Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, one of my all-time favorite movies. And every time I rewatch Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which I did recently, I fall into a deep dark hole of despair and heartbreak. Obviously, I'm in this hole at this very moment. And I just can't stop thinking about how our memories make us who we are. How intimacy is more than just physical moments. And how in modern times, we just can't seem to let people be forgotten. I know a lot of people hear the word intimacy and their mind immediately goes to dirty things. But as I've gotten older, I can't help but think about how intimacy is so much more than just those type of moments. I wanted to do something a little bit different today. As I go through my personal talking points about intimacy, relationships, and just what makes us us, I wanted to do a little bit of a media dissection, since these 2 movies are what inspired this video. The movies being Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind and Little Fish. So I'm gonna preface this video will contain some spoilers, but I'm going to try to keep it just vague enough so that you are inclined to go watch the movies yourself. So to get into it, the main plot point of both of these movies revolve around memories. How they tie us to other people, how they make us who we are, and the consequences of forgetting. In Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, we follow 2 main characters, Joel and Clementine. In this world, there's a procedure that you can get that you can erase your memories of someone or something that you don't want to have anymore. Going into this movie, Clementine has already had this procedure, so we're primarily following Joel's journey in erasing her and also the memory that he has with her beforehand. In Little Fish, like I said earlier, it's about a couple who is affected by a viral pandemic that causes people to lose their memories, whose names are Jude and Emma, and focuses around when Jude begins to forget his life and his relationship with Emma. It's no secret of life that our memories are a huge part of what make us who we are. Sometimes they're made up of moments that we wish we could remember forever, and other times they're made up of moments that we wish that we could forget. But they are both equally important.
I was so sad the day I met you. I can't remember why.
This is the opening line to Little Fish, and boy, is it a doozy. Heartbreak, rip out of my soul, thank you. We find out later that this is actually where the story ends, but I think the line remains as equally as impactful as the opening. Something I find silly about memories, especially when it comes to relationships, is that we often can't remember the first time we met someone, or at least not clearly. But that doesn't necessarily matter with how relationships are formed, because we don't get to know people by a few big moments, but instead a bunch of small moments, intimate moments. Something that is prevalent throughout both of these films is the focus on small details. There are no grand gestures within these movies. Like life, there rarely is one. A way this is emphasized in Little Fish is by the close-up shots. Lips softly grazing each other, eyes staring a little bit too long at the other person, and soft touches that say, I know this person, without saying anything at all. In Eternal Sunshine, which is what I'm going to call Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind from here on out because that is the longest title ever, so Eternal Sunshine. In that film, we see it through layered dialogue, a type of talking that could only happen when 2 people truly deeply know each other. Sometimes they're complaining about each other or telling small inside jokes, and it's not always necessarily explained, but from it we can tell that there is history there. We often overlook these moments in real life because we've convinced ourselves that intimacy only exists within concrete moments, like sex or spending hours texting to try to get to know one another. But I don't think that intimacy is always tangible. It's like how they say you don't truly know someone until you experience a hard moment with them, which I don't think is necessarily true, but it's the idea that the first time you truly get to know someone is when they finally let their guard down, and there's no performance in what they should or should not be doing. There's a scene in Eternal Sunshine when Clementine says,
I tell you everything. Every damn embarrassing thing. You don't trust me?
this scene is an indicator about Joel's personality. That he's too scared to say the wrong thing, so he just says nothing at all, which in turn makes Clementine feel like she's unable to truly connect with him. I think this is something that happens often in relationships. We feel the pressure to be the perfect partner or friend, so we never open up and we end up missing the great experience on the other side. But where does all this pressure come from, especially in modern times? Anxiety, obviously, which is no different than any other generation has experienced. But I feel like this anxiety has shifted and has become more intense in recent years because of our access to ideals. We see these ideals pushed in a lot of places, primarily media, whether that be traditional or social. And don't get me wrong, I think people should always be striving to be the best partner that they can be, and that people shouldn't settle for less than what they think they deserve. But as humans, that just won't happen all the time. Being the perfect partner, friend, family member just can't happen all the time. And I don't think that people should be so scared to be wrong that they don't even try in the first place. There's been this new phenomenon or idea, I guess you could call it, on social media, where people have been holding on to this idea that everything is embarrassing now. That being seen trying is embarrassing. Trying to date, trying to make friends, trying to be adventurous because there's more eyes than ever watching us. Eyes that could potentially see you fail. We live in a panopticon with social media, where people subconsciously or maybe consciously live in fear that anything they do could be shared or seen by thousands, millions of people around the world. For example, and this is a bit specific, so I'm not saying this is like everyone's feeling this exact way, but this is just an example of something that I've seen on social media. But there's this newest trend of creators who are dating influencers. Basically, they go on dates and they talk about it. Yeah, I don't know if I'd want my date to be blasted all over the world for everyone to have their opinions on. I don't think there's anything wrong with mentioning dating or talking about how you personally feel about dating or the date, but detailing every single moment that a person did something right or wrong just feels like cop behavior, and it's not conducive to creating trust, which is one of the first steps to be intimate with someone. Speaking of trust, I think it's one of the most intimate experiences that two people can have with each other. It's usually unspoken and can only be achieved by being truly unguarded in your relationship, and can potentially remain even after the initial connection has faded. And in some ways, I think that's when it can be its most beautiful, when you don't see someone anymore or you don't have that connection with someone anymore, because it proves that that relationship was as important and strong as you thought it was. Even if you don't know why you trust them anymore, you still do. Watching these movies makes me so grateful for every memory that I have, whether that be the great ones or the ones that I wish I could zap out of my brain like these movies, because they all made me who I am now. These memories help me understand myself and other people on a deeper level. I'm not even just talking about romantic memories or the big crazy moments in life, but every memory that has stayed with me as I've gotten older, even the ones that I don't remember as clearly now. A big theme in The Little Fish is how the body remembers what we may forget. There's a scene when Jude begins to have his first real signs of truly losing his memory, and he turns to Emma and says, "I haven't forgotten how you feel." And this isn't just talking about her body necessarily, but the impact that they have on one another. He might not even know who she is, but he realizes that when he's in her presence, he knows that he cares about her. I don't think we ever really forget the intimacy that we have with people that we are or were once close to. I think memories can fade. I think there can be a loss of love and a loss of connection. But because intimacy is about the little moments can bring these memories back for us. Think about your first love, for example. If it was a long time ago, you might not remember what their laugh sounds like or how they tied their shoes, but sometimes you'll catch a stray whiff of perfume or cologne and you'll remember what they taught you about yourself and how it shaped every relationship you had moving forward. Along those lines, I feel like intimacy can also happen within yourself. For example, maybe you're walking down the street, maybe it's fall, and you feel a cold air that reminds you of being in 4th grade and waiting for the bus. And it makes you sad, but you realize without that memory and without that time, you wouldn't be where you are now. Those are a bit dramatic recreations of it, but I feel like that's just a good way to encapsulate what I'm trying to say. These memories can fade away as quickly as they come, but clearly they're not gone forever. because you just remembered them. Memories, no matter how small they are, can leave a lasting impact on how we move through the world. There's a scene in Eternal Sunshine, most commonly referred to as the bird scene. In this scene, Joel is reliving a memory, or sort of in a dream state of this memory, that he has of being a kid where the playground bullies force him to kill a bird. Young Clementine is also in this scene protecting him, even though she wasn't actually there when he was a kid. I like to believe that this scene symbolizes how our past never really leaves us, and how our present can help shape the way we perceive our past. That sounds confusing. So basically what I mean by this is we experience moments in our lives, whether that be trauma or joy maybe, and these memories shape us to live a certain way. They can even be key parts of our personalities. When we meet and bond with new people, there is a potential that they can help us heal from these past traumatic memories, or that we can use our positive memories to help the other person. And that causes us to shift our perspective on these memories. We can begin to see them in a different light because of the way that these memories helped impact a different experience. Once you remember and come to terms with these memories, you're able to use them to move forward as a better person or partner. I hope that makes sense, but either way it circles back to my main point that we shouldn't push down and try to avoid our memories, because then there's no way to move forward from them. I think this scene is also showing how Joel is coming to terms with the fact that Clementine actually helped him through his trauma more than he thought she did. Like the way that when you're a little kid, you might not always pick up on what's happening around you, and you might only notice years later what that particular moment meant to you. Also in this scene is the iconic quote,
"I wish I knew you when I was a kid."
Which, if you've ever experienced that emotion before, it is quite heartbreaking. These two movies tackle visually showing memory loss very differently, which I would say is what makes these movies different from each other. I think like with a lot of it's similar, but the imagery, some of the writing, that's what makes it separate and not feel like a copy paste of Eternal Sunshine to Little Fish. With Eternal Sunshine, we know Joel is undergoing a memory erasing procedure. So we follow Clementine's erasure from his mind through these dream-like scenarios. Sometimes they're batshit insane, and sometimes they feel like real moments, the way that dreams do in real life. With Little Fish, we only see this memory loss visually a few times. It's usually a POV shot where people's faces are blurry or distorted. It's not like one is necessarily better than the other, but I do have a special place in my heart for Eternal Sunshine's version of this. Maybe it's because I watched it first, maybe it's just because I think it's a little bit more visually stimulating. In Eternal Sunshine, there's a scene where Joel and Clementine are in a crumbling house that the tide, the ocean, is coming into. This scene is a dream variation of the first time he met Clementine and when he left her. She says,
"I wish he'd stayed."
I wish I'd stayed too. Now I wish I'd stayed. I wish I'd done a lot of things.
Something that I particularly like about this scene compared to some of the other scenes in the movie is that it's very clear what's happening. That in the last moments of him remembering her, he finally has clarity of what went wrong. Where he failed in the relationship, where she did. In some of the earlier scenes, the visuals are very confusing and like disorienting. Sort of like those memes that say name one thing in this photo and it's just confusing because you can't. While I do like those earlier scenes because it fits Joel's confusion and resistance to forgetting, the decision to make the final moment before her permanent erasure calm gives the viewer the chance to focus on really what's happening. To deliver the final gut punch. Which is where the story comes full circle. So let's talk about this scene. Intimacy requires vulnerability, something that is easier said than done. To have love, connection, intimacy, you have to allow yourself to be vulnerable, to open yourself up to the opportunity to be potentially hurt or wronged. Is it worth the risk? That's up to you to decide, the viewer. But I think, like this movie portrays, as we progress through life and relationships, it can sometimes be easier to just stay closed off. Maybe it's not the case, but I feel like many people, including myself, seen people swing hard one way or the other when it comes to this idea. And I think that's because our relationships have become far more complicated than a person should have ever experienced. I remember in high school and I was talking, and I'll say talking loosely here because basically it was a relationship forced together by my older sister and her friend. Anyways, when we were talking, we had this sort of unspoken rule that every third day we would text each other, and when it fell on a weekend, we would maybe hang out. Obviously, I was like 14 or whatever, so like who really really cared what was going on with that, even though that's like stupid as fuck. But I've seen grown adults in this day and age doing the weird texting tango, where people refuse to text each other first unless the other person texted them first last time, or whatever it may be. And that's just one of many overly complicated new rules of dating. In the grand scheme of things, dating probably isn't that much different than generations before us. But I think with the normalization of talking stages, being ghosted, and just dating apps in general, it overall speeds up the dating cycle. And because it's sped up and less personal, people are less inclined to be vulnerable. And for good reason. Why would someone want to open up and be vulnerable with someone who's going to disappear without a trace in a few months? However, this vulnerability and this openness is what cements bonds between people and what keeps people interested in one another. And I'm not necessarily talking about sex or sharing your deepest, darkest secrets on the first date, but being open to asking and answering questions in a real, honest way. Not being worried or being judged for asking someone to hang out because you're interested in them. And overall, just not being embarrassed by being a vulnerable person. Obviously, you can't control what someone else is going to do or say, so it can feel like yelling into a bottomless pit with some people. But if we as a collective choose to reject these new dating rules, then hopefully maybe the dating cycle can slow down and people can have more intimate moments with one another. Another thing about intimacy and vulnerability when it comes to dating apps is that dating apps have changed a lot. Let me be clear, I am not anti-dating app. I think it's a great way to meet and connect with people, especially when everyone's on their damn iPhone anyways. But I'm begging the people of the world to please stop using dating apps to become pen pals with people. If you don't know what I mean when I say pen pals, it's when two people match on a dating app and they just text each other for like months, or maybe not months, but like a long time, longer than they need to be texting. Because I always think the longer the pen pal, the less likely you're going to actually meet someone in person. Unless you're legit pen pals, that's a different thing. Being pen pals has created this new problem where people will talk a lot, form a sort of false sense of intimacy, and then when they actually meet each other, they're like, hey, hi, because they don't know each other. If you were to have multiple conversations, deep conversations in person, you would begin to form an intimacy, but over text, there's not really any way to truly bond, aside from just like knowing the information about the other person. I'm a firm believer when first dating someone that you can't form a deep bond with someone without at least talking on the phone. There's too much about relationships that involve body language or even just hearing the inflections of someone's voice that you would be able to truly bond over texting. Or even worse, Snapchatting. Oh, free yourself, free yourself. Back to my main point, I think people these days put too much pressure on online communication like texting and social media use when it comes to dating. And I think this happens because for a lot of people, online feels as real as their real life, when it's just not. Social media and texting is a great mode to stay connected with other people, but it's not a replacement for moments that should happen face to face. The first time someone tells you they like you should not be over text message. The first time someone tells you they love you should never be over text message. But that just happens now, and it's normal. I also think texting and social media is a lazy way to avoid vulnerability. And I guarantee, and I'm sorry to these people if they are out there, that there's people whose partners are only affectionate to them over the phone because they're too scared to be vulnerable in person. Because when you look someone in the eye, or you hear their voice, that's what makes it real. Until then, it's just pixels. Quick side note here, let's bring back like the real date. Like maybe we go back to bowling or something. Like I don't really want to go bowling, but I think if someone proposed that to me as a date, I would be like, huh, bowling. Anyways, both of these movies, especially Little Fish, have such soft, real imagery of what it means to be intimate. They show the little moments.
Man, I can't remember anything without you.
That's very sweet, but try, okay?
Okay.
There's a sort of new thing that a lot of people do recently. Maybe it's not new, but I feel like it's been amplified. And that is, when it comes to relationships, there's a somewhat sort of new but not totally new phenomenon. And it's people's ability to torture themselves because they refuse to forget. I know I mentioned earlier about being grateful for the good and bad memories that I have, but I'm talking about something different here. I'm talking about how it's become very normal to hold on to people that have let go of us because we have constant reminders and the ability to check up on someone through their social media, and it's all because of our phones. This can range from a casual profile check-in, just seeing what's going on, nothing crazy, only looking for maybe like 5 minutes tops, to full-blown internet stalking for multiple months on end. With our access and connection to one another, most people truly never let go of their exes, whether that be ex-relationships, ex-friends, ex-family. And I really can't fathom a reality where that's not harmful to your mental state, especially if you are a routine stalker, and there are some of you out there, and I know that because I've seen people talk about how they have a list of people that they like to check up on. I think when you let someone hold this power over you, or even just take up the space in your brain, you're hurting yourself from being able to finally move forward. I have a friend, sorry Diva, I'm about to air your shit out just a little bit, but she had a little period where she was checking people's Instagrams like every single day. And the light that was draining from her eyes over the period of time that she was doing this was very real, and you could see how it was sucking the soul out of her. And I think usually checking up on people or holding on to them is pointless, because usually you're never going to find the answer that you want from checking in on someone or just thinking about them again and again and again. Because if you check in on someone and they didn't post, you're disappointed that you didn't get to catch up on their life. But if they do post and they're doing better than you expected, it makes you sad because you're secretly probably preying on their downfall. Don't get me wrong, like I said earlier, I think it's natural to still be connected to someone that you had a deep relationship with, but that doesn't mean that you have to hold on to it. Something that I find very interesting about Eternal Sunshine is that if you're watching it with an optimistic mindset, I guess you could say, then you can see it as a story about two people whose souls are so intertwined that they always find their way back to each other. Which, let me be clear, I love that. I love that idea. But if you're watching it in a more negative headspace, then it becomes clear that there is a reality within that movie that's about how even though they erased each other from their minds and they found their way back to each other, the outcome will still remain the same. In Eternal Sunshine, we don't see Joel and Clementine's next attempt at love. We can only infer that it will go better or will stay the same as it did before. And it's speculated, and I say speculated because I couldn't find the original source for this information, and also I didn't feel like looking that hard for it, so we're gonna say speculated, that in the original script, the movie ends with Clementine erasing Joel for the 15th time. Which, if that's true, and I low-key kind of believe that it is, it completely shifts the tone of the movie. Because that's not love, that's captivity. I think the idea that patterns, especially in relationships, can never be broken isn't true. But if we apply this idea to real life, especially with social media, apps, texting, and our phones in general, give people too many opportunities to reconnect. And people give each other too many chances. If you broke up in the 80s, yeah, maybe someone would swing by your house with a boombox over their head or like write you a bunch of letters. But if you never wanted to see that person again, you wouldn't necessarily have to. I think this in general plays into how we as a people are way too overconnected nowadays. And it almost feels like there's this false intimacy still. That it's never broken until you choose to never seek them out again. Because you can scroll through their photos or reread text messages. Maybe there's months, days, years worth of text messages. And if you continue to do this, you'll never allow yourself to truly have the space to forget and grow. And I just want to end this section off by saying, overall, the moments that matter, you don't need a picture or a text message to remember. Because if it really mattered, you would still remember. I'm not going to spoil the ending of Little Fish or Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind more than I already have, because I encourage anyone who made it this far in the video to go check both those movies out, but I would say start with Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, because that's my favorite. And also, while you're at it, why don't you go check out my Letterboxd too? I'm gonna put it on the screen right here. I do really below average reviews. I have no basis of how I rate movies, and also I like every movie, so take it with a grain of salt, but sometimes I'm funny on there. Anyways, to end this video off, I just want to say I love movies. I love how emotional they can make a person feel. I know I might have some people in the comments saying, boo, your taste in movies sucks, like because there's no guns or superheroes or whatever people think makes a good movie nowadays. But one thing that I feel like you cannot deny about either of these movies, how beautifully they explore the idea of intimacy and just what it means to forget. When I was going through Letterboxd after finishing Little Fish, I stumbled upon a review that I think I want to end this video on, because I feel like this review really stuck with me. What if being remembered was the only tangible proof you existed? Then one day you're forgotten, but your corporeal form remains. What does that make you? And yeah, I don't know if I really answered that question with this video, but I'm gonna go to bed thinking about it. Sorry that my voice is so hoarse. I've been trying to chug water as I make this video, but it is 2 in the morning, so can't really do anything about that. Anyways, like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Bye.